right. So what are we even talking about? Are you kicking this off? I know on some of your other lives that you've been kicking it off, but I got questions. I want to pick your brain too. So
let's just keep it conversational and see where we go.
All right.
Cool. All right, I'll jump into this. So this is a little different because Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp are all down right now. So me and Janda are here on Zoom, but this is part 6, I believe, in the 10-part series celebrating the launch of my new ebook, Freelancer Year 1, which is for people that are just getting into the freelance business or have maybe been in it for a couple years and kind of want a back to basics gut check. If you want, go check out the link in my bio and you can download it there. But on to the main event. The man,
so
the myth,
sick, man. Hey,
the legend.
Hey, congrats on your ebook, man,
dude.
Oh,
hey, thanks, man.
It's fun. I've been seeing your stuff was starting to feed into my Explore page because you've been blowing up on Instagram. So it started feeding into my Explore page. And when you messaged me, I was like, heck yeah, I'll do that. We're like hammering on the same nail, both of us. So it's been fun to see your content. And I told you this in a text message or in email or something, DM, but you're just nailing it on your content, the conversational flow. And you see so many people try and do what you're doing, where it's the junior person speaking to the senior person who's answering the questions. But man, you've got the patter down so well, and it's just so smooth. So congrats to you, man.
Appreciate it, man.
You really nailed your little niche going on there. And when I see one of your things go live, it's like, it's been up for 5 minutes and it has 570 likes, which just says that a lot of people have notifications turned on for your content, which is just awesome too.
It's been an experience because I'm relatively new to this social media thing. We didn't really start this until like March or April. And it was some month in the summer where it just hit, I think we tapped into the zeitgeist a little bit because of how many people are going freelance, during and post pandemic. And, I've said this before, but I think America's supposed to be a majority freelance workforce by 2027.
Yeah.
So,
gig economy is the real deal for sure.
Yeah. Which I'm thrilled about.
Yeah. Because it's already your life. So now everybody's just like getting caught up to where you are. Yeah. Seriously. But no, kudos to you as well. I've been following you for a while and following your YouTube. And I hadn't read Burn Your Portfolio. And then in anticipation of this event, I got it delivered and, you did?
I'm about halfway through it.
Okay.
And I'm like, dude, I'm a clone of this guy. We agree on so many things.
It's so much stuff. When I see your content, I'm like, yeah, I would have said it like that. So so it's so fun to see that, man. So kudos to you. I like seeing people who get it, and you get it, on how to talk to clients and how to navigate the diplomacy of client relationships, and just business in general. And a lot of my content recently, I've been playing with reels and trying to do my own little style of reels.
I love them.
And I can't stop myself. I don't want to be too serious, and sometimes I go over the top and it's too corny, but it's fun. It's fun to make.
I binge your reels. I like them.
Thank you. It's diplomacy. I think diplomacy is like one of the big things in business in general that a lot of people miss. And your content really hammers home good diplomacy. Yeah.
Like you said, it's an industry agnostic skill set, right? Like any business. I think my kind of light switch moment was because I'm out here in LA, and I when I'm not growing my freelance business with my wife, we're also constantly kind of pushing the film projects down the road, and we've worked on some stuff like some film and TV projects. But when I first came out here, I noticed that a lot of people that weren't necessarily the best at what they did were very successful. Yeah. And that wasn't a negative observation to me. A lot of people put that chip on their shoulder and say, "Oh, I'm better than that guy." But for me, I thought, okay, so there's something else then. It's and you can kind of reverse engineer. Oh, it's how you handle yourself in a room. It's your networking abilities. It's your soft skills. And of course you have to be good at what you do, but that's not the determining factor, I don't think.
No. How to Win Friends and Influence People. One of my favorite books. I mention it all the time, but it's in the introduction, it says 85% of your success is due to your people skills, your soft skills, and 15% is due to your technical ability. And man, you see that every CEO in the world has that. Like Elon Musk is not in the factory hammering the nails into the Tesla. Steve Jobs was not putting the microchips in. He even hired Woz before Apple even started, just to finish his own freaking Atari projects, man. I mean, it's a master delegator. Master delegator. And vision, delegation, and people skills. You have that combination of stuff, and you can really get somewhere in any business. It's not specific to just the creative industry.
Yeah, I tack onto that in that 80, 85, 15 ratio. Also, setting aside maybe finding 5% somewhere in there for vision. Like what you meant. It's just like, it's amazing what you can do when you just decide to. Not to get too abstract, but a lot of times, and I remember, for the first 5 or 10 years of my career, it was just, I'm just going to work on a couple projects each month, and that's going to be how I pay rent. And, you realize that you can ask a lot more of yourself and of the universe, if you're willing to put the work into it to go get it. So
it was the same for me. I started, freelancing out of fear. It was the dot bomb, and I was like looking for jobs, couldn't get a job. And so I was like, okay, I'll just freelance, because I had freelance work. And then that started to grow, but I had no vision of what it could become. So I just kept grinding 80-hour weeks. And I was like afraid to hire. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no vision that, I have enough volume here that I could hire people and start turning this into an agency. And once I opened up some vision, just a morsel, and hired that first person, 1 year later had 5 employees in an office space, because now all of a sudden the universe, like you said, can say, okay, finally you figured it out, man. This is what I've been trying to cram down your throat for 2 years.
You broke through that ceiling. Now
and then
once on the next one.
Exactly. And then I started to look around and think, oh, wait, look at these agencies that are around. Wow. It's not unrealistic for me to grow to 10 people, 15 people. Hey, I just met this schlup who owns an agency. He's got 20 employees, I can do that. Exactly. I'm like, he's got nothing special. I'm going to go and do that. And so once you start opening the vision, man, it is so critical. And a lot of people, because they're fear-based, don't do that. They don't open up the vision. When you started, let's just take you for an example. When you started social media, so you started back March, April. Yeah. And here we are in the beginning of October, you have 100,000 followers on Instagram and high demand for your content. Like I said at the start, people jump in. When you started, what did you think was the happy point of your growth? You were like, oh, I'd be happy with X number of followers by the end of the year. What did you have in mind?
So the short answer to your question is my goal at the start of the project was 100,000 followers by the end of the year. I came out had vision, ambitious. But the disclaimer there, and this is something that my wife Courtney and I have kind of talked about since, is how many times I kind of poked around that wall before we landed on this channel, right? So it wasn't like, out of a vacuum, this Instagram channel arrived, and it was, I had a YouTube channel where it was a hobby of mine. I'm a big cigar smoker, and so I had a YouTube channel reviewing cigars, and kind of understood how a niche audience responds to content there. And then I tried to do something on my Instagram. I tried to start a Facebook group, and it was all kind of just like research in my mind. Like it wasn't like really, so there was a runway to it. And then we were really looking for some scalable passive income for our business. And excuse me. we landed on, well, let's grow a social audience. Let's grow an audience and figure out what to do with them later. And we hired a guy on, I don't know if you know Marketing Harry on Instagram. He's brilliant. And he's been our consultant, and he kind of helped us, lay out a roadmap. And then it was just if you've got that kind of a, shoot for the moon, land in the stars mentality, I mean, it was hours. My wife will tell you, I had bruises on my thumbs from how much I was commenting in those first few months, getting, it was 800 followers, a month or something. And then it just eventually pays off if you're just consistent. Yeah. And smart with it. It's not just consistency. You got to kind of, you got to know that you're delivering.
Yeah. I had a similar ramp up, but mine, when I started, I thought, oh, it'd be cool, man. Maybe if I got to like 10,000 followers, it'd be good. And it was before mine was at the very, very start of the Instagram design community boom. And it's when the carousel content started to just blow up. And so I was in that first wave of that growth. And I thought, oh, maybe 10,000 or 20,000 followers. That would be amazing if I had that. And by the end of the year, I had 100,000 followers. And I was like, wow, this is surprising how fast it grew. And then it gave me confidence to say, okay, now I can go and do what I planned all along. I already had 2 books out, but I wanted to create courses and I wanted to coach creatives and stuff. I wanted to do that. And it gave me the ability to have access to this audience that I could deliver some premium value content to. And just the philanthropic side of it. I love giving value because I didn't have anybody when I was out grinding in the freelance world, scared to death, afraid of overhead, afraid of hiring, afraid of office space, afraid of everything. I wish I would have had somebody who, it didn't even have to be personal. It could have just been somebody who could have been giving me some cheerleading along the way through content. And I try and do that in my content. And at the same time, solve problems that I know they're having, because most of my content, well, all my content is delivered to me like 18 years ago. That's my target audience.
That's mine too. I envision myself working in a studio apartment in Hollywood. And I remember being so frustrated. I remember I would like talk to my parents and be like, why can't someone just tell me what to do? Like, why is it's so secretive, or, there's no information out there. And that's changing too, which is, I had a last episode was with Jamie Gannon, who reps the Gen Z colors real hard, right? Okay. She's a Gen Z designer. And we were talking about how many assets they have now online to, just kickstart a career. Whereas I recalled when I bought my first real pro camera, I had to sit down with the freaking instruction manual for, 4 days to learn how to use it. Whereas now that's a 15-minute YouTube video. So it's just, there's a lot out there to just start. It's a great time to be starting a freelance career. I think
so is. Oh, totally, man. The world has changed, and the pandemic has accelerated that. It was already a changing world, and the global economy was a real thing, but post-pandemic, this is reality. And from not just from a work standpoint, but from an education standpoint, education has changed. I mean, I have 2 sons in college, and it kind of ticks me off because they got like, last year it was all their classes were freaking digital Zoom camera classes. I'm like, come on, just go buy a bunch of courses for a fraction of your tuition spend if you're not getting the college experience on top of the education. This year now half their courses are digital, and they have a few in person, and the education world has changed. Education has changed. And I think universities should be afraid of keeping up. How do they compete?
Not to go down a complete tangent, but that industry has been due for a bubble burst for a while now. I think the price has inflated, but the offering hasn't changed for like 100 years. It's just, but for people just getting into the freelance racket, and I say this in my book is, and I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, but finding when you're just getting started, finding an industry to target, to kind of niche down on, is something that I got a lot of success with in early career. I kind of honed in on meetings and events, and I was the guy that was, delivering Hollywood quality filmmaking to the meetings and event space, which previously was just a guy with a tripod and some jazz music, and now I think is a great time to be, you take a look at the companies that have, been basically leapfrogged 10 years because of COVID, that are now, because we're, fintech is an example I gave Jamie yesterday, where, we work with fintech companies that we're making content for them to explain to an audience that they weren't expecting to have to market to for another 10 years. Mm-hmm. And suddenly they're like, oh shit, we need content for the boomers because we need to teach boomers how to do all this digital banking stuff. And, they were like, this is something we were planning for 2030 and so I think if you can find industries like that, that are just starving for content right now, because of COVID, it's a good strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I niche down just because in working in Hollywood, I was working at Fox before I started freelancing, and my contacts that were giving me work were my friends who were working at other studios. And so I was getting freelance work, and I didn't understand niching. I didn't understand business. I didn't understand how to build a business or run an agency. So my niching just came out of fortunate circumstances in the early days of, hey, Mike, you're our friend and I work at Disney. Here's some work. And I was like, oh, cool. This is great. Thank you. Later on in my agency, I started to realize, whoa, okay, so I've got a portfolio filled with Hollywood stuff. I can go and take that. I can go and take that and go approach all of the other places that I don't know somebody right now, but I can get in the door because I look like what we were, an agency doing a ton of Hollywood work. So my niche, I joke about this because when I finally figured it out, it made a difference. And I wish I would have landed on it sooner, but we were the number one third bid option for the entertainment industry. Out of all the third bids that they had to get, we were number one choice. And so if bid number one and bid number two were too expensive, then out of all the third bids, we were the obvious choice because
get Michael the phone.
Yeah. So it was, and I built a great business on that. We build millions of dollars doing that, but it's when the mega agencies were too expensive for certain budget sized projects. We had a cost structure because I was based in Salt Lake City. I moved from LA when I was freelancing to Salt Lake, and that's where my agency was. I had my cost structure lower, but because of my background in Hollywood, I could deliver Hollywood level quality at a lower cost price. And that was the niche I played, and it worked.
That's awesome.
So, no regrets.
When did you first consider yourself in business for yourself? When did you take that jump?
2002 was the very start. So June 2002 is when. So long story short, my team of 50 something people at Fox. Our divisions got purchased by Disney and turned into ABC Family and Jetix and a bunch of other kid properties over there. And then it got all dismantled over a year and a half of time. So the team of 50 went down to 6 of us on the last day of essentially turned the lights off on Fox Kids, Fox Family site. Fox Family was already dead. It had become ABC Family, but Fox Kids had advertiser obligations that needed to be fulfilled. And so they kept us this skeleton crew of us together just to keep it running. And anyway, but that's when I started freelancing. I was double dipping income during that last 6 months. So I was just saving all the money, working full time, and then freelancing and saving all my freelance money into a bank account, which became my seed money. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2002 is when I officially started freelancing out of force. I had no job opportunities. But I had freelance work. So I was kind of forced into it, which is good. I was never ambitious back then to just say, oh, I'm going to go conquer this mountain. It was all fear-based. I had nothing. I had to support my wife and kids.
Yeah. When you graduated college, did you jump straight into an agency, or did you freelance at all then?
No, I didn't. Well, I freelanced a couple little side projects, like $200 things, just little tiny stuff.
Do you remember what your first ever freelance project was?
American Evergreen Foundation. American Evergreen Foundation. I designed their logo, this website, some marketing slicks, all this stuff. It was like $350. I worked on it for probably like, I don't know how many hundreds of hours, 200 hours.
You were making like 12 cents an hour.
Yeah, it was something. But
how did you come up with the price?
I just pulled it out of thin air. I was like, okay, I can do this. And when I get it done and get paid, I'm going to buy a TV. It was exciting.
It's very transactional.
I bought a 27-inch TV that was, super thrilling back then.
Reverse projection and
That's great. That was the first thing. I should post that somewhere. I think I might have posted that in a piece of content at some point, but I bounced around some junior designer jobs in the early days, just kind of getting my feet wet, 6 months here, 1 year here kind of stuff. And then ended up getting a position as the webmaster at a children's toy and book company in Phoenix. And that webmaster turned into a creative director, and they were getting IPO money or startup money to blow up this huge kids site, which is what led me into Fox and qualified me for that. So
webmaster, I just envision
webmaster,
like the page master, just like you got your crystal ball in your office.
It's funny, man. Anybody over 60, they still use the term webmaster, and you're like, come on, boomer. And I can call them boomers because I'm just shy of the boomer age. My parents are
just
boomers.
Dodge that bullet. Yeah.
My parents are boomers, but I'm like, come on, for real, webmaster? Nobody's a webmaster anymore.
It's an elegant title.
It's like a dungeon master. Yeah.
What needed to happen, do you think, before your career could really take off, whether it be like in those early days or post Fox, before your freelance and agency career?
The early days, it was self-education. I realized that what I needed to actually know to succeed, I didn't learn in college. What I learned in college was how to learn. I learned how to learn, and I learned how to see the gaps in my knowledge. That's what I learned. But what I learned to actually succeed, I had to learn on my own. And so it was book after book and experimentation and Photoshop from, after dinner at 6 o'clock at night, eat dinner with my wife, and then go sit on my computer and just piddle around for hours to figure it out. And I loved it, and I still do. I mean, I can sit in front of my computer now 10 hours a day, no problem. Get a comfortable chair, man, because I got, in fact, I get days like yesterday, Sunday, today's Monday. I try not to work on Sundays. I try and have some time. And it's like my worst day, man, because I just have the itch. I'm like, I don't feel productive. I want to get back to my computer and just pound on something visual.
Yeah. Do you still consider like you're always developing? You're always trying to learn something new?
Oh, yeah. And the last couple of years, I've learned social media marketing. I've learned course creation. I've learned studio setup, camera configuration, audio editing, video editing. I mean, I've learned all that in the last couple of years of doing this because I don't have employees anymore. So my employees used to do all the stuff. I could just go and hand it over. Now I've had to figure it out, and I don't want to have employees again. I think I did my turn on that. So anyway,
back to the lone wolf.
I like it, man. I like the complete flexibility of my time. Yeah. It's good.
Well, that's where we're at. I mean, we have like our merry band of freelancers that we scale up and down on projects, but I remember when one of the first kind of old guard guys that I became friends with. Most of my friends are, 60 and older.
It's the mustache and cigars, man. You're like, you're marketing yourself to those people. In the wisdom, the stories, it's just, but one of my buddies owns a post house over in Burbank. And when we really got going here, my wife and I called him up for just
just some advice. And he said, just don't start a payroll. It's like, whatever you do, just don't get employees. So that's been although, we might be headed that direction, but I think, I am enjoying the, like you said, the flexibility or
flexibility.
You can always scale up or scale down. And
yeah. I liked it. It's great from a business standpoint because you can monetize multiple people's time. So I started making a lot more money when I started hiring people because my personal output wasn't capped by the 24 hours a day that I had available to me. So the numbers scale really quickly when you start hiring people in an agency model. Yeah.
Okay.
So food for thought.
Something to think about. Yeah.
And it's a good run, man. I mean, pound on it for 10 to 15 years and you can be sitting on a nice chunk of cash at the end of that run. Yeah.
I mean, once you get to, and I obviously I want to try and like make this practical for people just starting too. I don't want to get too pie in the sky, but all this, I mean, it's good to hear this stuff because it is possible. I mean, both of us started at the very bottom of the totem pole, and it's all in what you put into it, and what your network is, and how smartly, intelligently you're working, and that you're constantly developing your skills. But yeah, I think that's something to think about. Once you get to a certain level of client, you realize that they're just paying for you to solve a problem for them.
Yeah,
and the amount of money is just dictated by the size of the problem, not necessarily the size of the job. And I've found that on my end too. When I'm hiring somebody, if I need something done immediately, I just say, just tell me how much you need me to put in your bank account, to fix this problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you really start getting in a groove as an entrepreneur or as a freelancer.
Yeah. And some of these big clients, what I found is that sometimes the problem for the person that you're working with isn't actually a business problem. Sometimes the problem is that the marketing manager who you're working for, their boss is like breathing down their neck saying, you got to get this live, get it done. Yeah. And their problem is that they want to get the pressure off of their shoulders.
Yeah.
The actual ROI to the company itself never hits the individual who you're working for.
Yeah.
And so a lot of these big
companies, a great point.
Yeah. A lot of these big companies that's the way that it is. And I think it's important. And I started to understand this later on in my agency life too, is when I'd sit down at the table of a new project opportunity, I'm looking around thinking, okay, what is her motivation? What's his motivation? What's his motivation? What's her motivation? Because it's not always, oh, we want this to sell more products. It's not always that. Her motivation is just don't make my life miserable as a freelancer. Just make this fun for me because I already hate my job enough. I don't want to hate my job and hate working with you also. So that's her problem. Then the next person over, his problem is, well, the CEO, I'm the CFO, and the CEO is like, gave me tight budget. I don't have any more to work with. I got to get this solved for the budget that the CEO is letting me spend on this thing. No, that's his problem. But the CEO, if he's at the table, he's sitting there thinking, oh, I want this to impact conversion on the site so that we're selling more products. So each of these people, you've got to speak to them a different way in the sales process so that you're touching on what their actual motivation is. And I think a lot of people in business don't understand that dynamic or don't analyze each person to really try and hone in on how to speak to them to sell them on the work.
That's really sage counsel. I think it's just you can get reductive and just think of it in terms of ROI as a dollar amount. I think how do you diagnose each person's motivation? Do you have a process, or is it just kind of a thing that you've developed over time?
I have a process for diagnosing. Well, not diagnosing, but for vetting projects. So I have a couple videos about that. But intuition is what comes out of that. I mean, you sit at the table long enough and you have enough conversations, you start to understand how the producer thinks versus the CEO.
Yeah.
And some of that intuition comes from me as having owned businesses in the past. What are my motivations? What were my motivations when I was outsourcing work as a creative director at Fox, hiring somebody? What was my motivation? I wanted cool work, and don't gouge me over my budget of what I have allocated to this. That's what I wanted. I never thought about the return on investment financial impact to Fox. In fact, half the stuff we did didn't even have a purpose like that. Just needed to get it done because it was a corporate initiative. So anyway, I think you just build intuition over time, and some of that intuition can come from not just the meetings, but from reading books and things. Start reading business books. Start understanding business fundamentals to be able to gain some intuition on that. It's really, really important.
Reading is a good. I try to start each day reading a different book. I try to cycle through a business, a philosophy, a fiction, and a biography each month, right? And but that is also to take it all the way back to what we were talking about with the folks, the assets that are available online now, the people that you can learn from. You're gonna make mistakes. That's a given. Like let's just go ahead and alleviate that concern right now, right? As you go down this journey. But what you can do is you can try and learn from others' mistakes as much as possible, so that you only make the big ones, and you only have to make them once. And that's kind of, I think, what you and I are doing here is going to try and save you from the little ones, that are just obnoxious. But you're I think that seeking out that information is really key to early growth. At least you can try and speed the process up a little bit.
Podcasts are just such a great resource for that. If you want to start understanding business fundamentals and the way that business owners think, so that you can start speaking their language, and find a business podcast where the people talking, their voice doesn't annoy you, and just start listening and go into it with the mindset of, okay, I'm going to try and glean 2 big takeaways from this hour-long podcast that I'm going to have on in the background while I'm working. 2 big takeaways that are going to add to my personal wisdom. And I think if you go into that, into content with that mindset, you can get a lot. It's always funny, man, when somebody you get a hater shows up on your post, and I'm always like, dude, come on. And it's most of the time it's a guy. So let's just be honest. We can guy bash for a second, but most of the time it's some guy who hates his life, and they come in, they bash on the content for some weird reason. And I look at it, I'm like, man, you're going about this all wrong. Yes, out of the 10 slides in this carousel, you might just lump them all together and say, oh, this is dumb. But look for the one little nugget in there that you didn't know. And there's probably 1 or 10. But find the one thing. And if you start going and looking for content that way, you're not going to get everything. You're reading 4 books a month. You don't get, let's say each book is 200 pages. You're not getting 800 pages of value out of that stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
You're getting 20 pages of value, 20 pages of, wow, that was a big one for me. I'm wiser and smarter now. And man, if we got to start looking at content that way, because we're just bombarded with so much content.
That's great.
If you look at it and say, oh, everything here has to be applicable. Otherwise, this is stupid. Then you're not going to get enough out of anything.
I've also noticed, speaking of the odd hater comment, that you typically get a reaction out of people where they feel like you might have touched on something there that that's challenging a firm belief of theirs, and I think that if your knee jerk is to, because it takes more effort to write a comment than to just move on. So I think if your knee jerk is to sit down and type out a comment like that, take a second and say, well, is there something here? Is there something here that maybe
I shouldn't have said or posted or something?
No, it's just, yeah. Or is there something that, about my own, the way that I'm growing my business currently, that I kind of subconsciously know is not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then some people just like to stir the pot. So we're
Yeah.
not talking to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It's true. Some of those people made me rethink things,
Yeah.
Some hater. I hate how they do it. I hate the approach, but sometimes that happens. Somebody, anyway, I don't want to get into some hater bashing, but somebody sent me a DM and it was like riddled with cuss words. What the F this and what blah, blah, blah. And I was like, man, that's a pretty aggressive way to ask a question. And then they replied back and they were like, oh, yeah, sorry.
There's a human being on the other end of this.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, come on, man, dial it down a notch. I didn't reply to their reply because I was like, I'm not going to spend my time in that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But just calling them out, I think it's okay to call people out sometimes.
For sure.
Say, look, there's a human being on the other side of this. You don't need to have that kind of tone. Come on.
I've noticed, I've been very fortunate. The community we're growing is very positive and everybody's helping each other out in the comments. But I've been interesting to see. I've noticed that anytime I post about subcontracting, some folks can't, like, they think that that's taking advantage of another freelancer and I've noticed that it's tricky to, in a 15-second reel, explain the caveats and break down the gray areas. But there are certain things like that it's like, just tell your buddy to charge you whatever they would charge a client, and then you set your margin on top of that. It's not there's no advantage. But I digress. Speaking of clients, what is the hardest lesson that you've ever had to learn about talking to clients or about dealing with clients?
About dealing with clients, the most painful lessons that I've learned, and I've learned, I think, all the painful lessons, but the most painful was...
Don't say that out loud. Knock on wood.
I don't do client work now, so I can. The most painful lesson was the detailed contract and not having it at the start. It burned me a few times. It burned me every time. And every time I got burned, I added clauses and sections to my contract to prevent the burn from ever happening again. But that was the big one. And that's why I hammer so much, man. I mean, I got like 50% of my content is about contracts and presenting proposals and selling clients and scoping projects, and just the nitty gritty details of all that was something that nobody ever taught me. I had to learn it through trial and error, and it was a painful lesson. All of them.
What's a contract clause that is maybe not an obvious one that you don't think people are tracking on that they might want to consider?
Well, a cancellation clause. I have a piece of content coming out about that soon, but a cancellation clause that gives you the right to cancel your project at any time that you choose. And the client owes you money for the work that you've completed, and then you'll deliver the files as they stand right now to that client. I didn't have that. And so when you get knee deep into a bad project, or neck deep into a bad project with a bad client, and you're like, I cannot go on with this. Well, that clause empowers you to say, I'm done. Here, I'm going to exercise the clause in the contract, the cancellation clause. Here's the notice in writing. Once you make final payment, we'll deliver the files to you as they stand right now. We wish you luck with another designer moving forward. That was a big one. And I've had to use it. I was
going to ask, is it like, how often, how common is that scenario? Is it a rare scenario, or?
It's not common. I mean, we had pretty good customer service strategies at my agency, so we didn't get into trouble too often. But when we did, and even when things got a little rocky, I would always have that in the back of my head thinking, okay, where's the cutoff point when I say to this client, we're done. I'm out of this. We're not going to work with you anymore. And, in the earlier days, when it was a small project, you just give them back their money and say, go somewhere else. It's a small amount of money. in the later days, when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of money that you need to collect or something, then things get a little hairy on that.
Yeah.
But most of these clients, most freelancers out there are working at project sizes that if it's miserable, just freaking write them a check and give them their money back and say, here you go, I'm out. And then you're done. It
all boils back down to what we were talking about earlier, is that scarcity mindset. You know, if you have a scarcity mindset, you want to hold on to these bad clients because you think, well, I got to pay rent this month. And sometimes that's a reality. You know, sometimes that's kind of the sucky part of the first year or two. But you know, sooner than you think, you can drop the client. There's millions more out there that will pay you your, $300 that you're charging at that particular moment.
Exactly.
You know, it's not like it's almost detrimental to your business to be dragged into that scenario that's going to, perpetuate for months and months because they'll have all these revisions and such. But
yeah, it is scarcity mindset that keeps people from firing a client and moving on. It's they're afraid of number one, they're afraid that they need the money. And the way that I look at that, I think, okay, instead of saying yes to this bad client, I'm going to say yes to my time to go find better clients.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the fear number one. And then fear number two is that, oh no, I can't have a bad client on my list, that now that client's going to be out there bashing me around town. And then it's going to give me bad reputation. And bad clients have bad reputation with a lot more people than just you. Yeah. So when they're going around bashing on you, all their bashy friends, well, you don't want their bashy friends as clients either.
Yep.
And the people that are good that they're bashing you to already know that there's some miserable person anyway. And they're going to take it with a grain of salt and say, well, yeah, okay, well, there's always two sides to the story. When John's talking about hating on somebody, we know John hates everybody. So you don't have to worry about the reputation play. And no single person has enough clout in the world to bash your business and ruin your business.
The world's a big place. Like that's the thing, right? Is, likely nobody's ever going to hear about this situation ever. That's the more likely scenario. But until you get into, kind of bigger players in a specific niche or industry, then, but to your point, at that point, I think most will be able to assess the situation.
Yeah. And you're in a lot better position firing them than them firing you and moving on. So take the initiative, because if you want the story to be right, then make the story, they were awful, I fired them. That's a lot better than them. Yeah. I dumped you. Yeah. We're not together anymore. Here's your socks. Yeah. It's better story. It's a better story in the business world when you're out there and you took the initiative. Yeah.
When you were in those first years, in those first, $300 gig years, what would you, if you knowing what you know today, what would you go back and tell yourself to do differently, or what would you say, keep doing this? That's right. And that's wrong.
Yeah. I would say, hey, don't worry about it so much. And don't worry about, you're going to level up your prices over time. You're going to qualify yourself for bigger clients over time. You're going to build your network over time. Don't over stress it all. And that's advice to myself, especially when I was starting my agency. And this was my only source of income. I was a scary freaking basket case, man. I was afraid. I wish in hindsight that I would have had to go back to what we started with, vision, to see what this was going to become, because what it became exceeded my greatest vision that I ever had when I started, is what it became. And if I would have looked at reality, I probably would have seen where it was headed right at the start. I would have looked at my work, looked at the clients, looked at the people I had access to, looked at the profitability of the work I was doing. And if I had a wise mentor at the time, which I had no mentor, that wise mentor would have said, man, Mike, you're sitting on a gold mine here.
Yep.
There's nothing to worry about. You got money in the bank. You're hiring people right. You've got clients. You've got portfolio. You got everything. This is going to be huge for you. Keep going. You're doing everything right. But nobody told me that because I didn't have somebody to tell me that. I tell people that in coaching calls all the time, man. When they're the scared Mike Janda of 20 years ago, and I see all the stars aligning for them on this great business that's ahead, I'm like, hey, you got nothing to worry about here. You are gonna slay. Hold on tight because this roller coaster is about to take off for you.
What's in those instances? What do you think the most common next step is for somebody who's about to embark on that journey? Like, what is something that they need to do that they're not doing?
So embarking on freelance, starting freelance, or
like when you say you talk to somebody, you're like, oh, you're set up, what is it that they do that you advise them to do next?
They've got to have 3 to 6 months of money in the bank to cover their monthly overhead. And then everything bigger than that can be money that they reinvest into their business in the form of hiring people, buying better machines, getting office space, whatever it is.
Smart.
So I look at that with a lot of the people that I work with. Once we get that 3 to 6 months of money sitting there, and some of these people have like 9-12 months of money sitting there. If they add the projects that they have greenlit and the work that the money they have in the bank, they got 12 months of runway. I'm like, let's spend 6 months worth of that and hire that employee you need right now. Hire the creative director to start sitting in meetings that you're sitting in, because you can afford them right now. You're not going to need more than 6 months. Most people aren't ever going to need more than 3 months. It's unlikely that you're not going to get work for 3 months and you're just going to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs and the phone never rings. You never get anything because the truth is any freelancer who's smart is going to be scared to death after 2 weeks of no work. And they're going to be out pounding, trying to find business.
Yep.
So you're not going to go 3 months with nothing, and you're never going to go 6 months. I didn't even go 6 months in the recession when my billings got cut down in half. It didn't take 6 months for that to stabilize. So
those were fun years.
Yeah, they were joyous.
I think that's great. I always say it's like once you get that kind of cushion, that safety net, you become a lot deadlier at the negotiation table because it's easy to come at it from a surplus mindset.
Yeah.
And then also, to your point, that's a great way to look at it is start reinvesting into your business at that point, right? I like that a lot. What do you think? This is what I was thinking about when you were talking about we can't handle going 2 weeks without finding a new client. I always say, I split my day into 2 parts. I spend the first half of my day developing new business, essentially, building our business, developing, lead generation. And the second half is delivery, managing projects. Mm-hmm. What do you think is a good way to make sure that you're always, you've got a constant incoming flow of clients? Because that's another thing. I've had this conversation a couple times in the DMs where they say, well, I'm so busy, I don't want to look for work. And I tell them, I would rather you be in control of the nozzle, right? Like I don't want you to stop looking for work. And then, you hit your dry spell and now you've got to go find work. I'd rather you be saying, can I book you a little later? Does that work? And you be in control of the flow. But what do you think is a good process?
That's exactly it. So my process for that is every single day you should do something that relates to sales.
Yep.
One thing every day. So to simplify the process down to the bare bones, that one thing could be look at your list of people you've worked with in the past year, find one that you haven't touched base with for a few months and send them an email and just check in on them, see how they're doing. It could be going to a networking event, going to a luncheon or something. It could be going and visiting a client. It could be, but something has to happen every day for sales, because if you don't, then you run into the roller coaster of cash flow where things are busy, so you don't sell, and then things dip, and then you panic sell is what I call it. Oh no, I don't have work. I'm going to panic sell.
Discount.
Yeah. I'm going to discount. I'm going to reach out to everybody. I'm going to ask for work way too directly, and that's going to turn people off. I'm going to panic sell, and panic selling might get enough work that all of a sudden you're busy again. And then you're not selling, and then you're going to be panic selling again. And so, man, the trick is always selling. Selling should be part of your daily activity as a freelancer, whether you're busy or not.
It's your job.
You've got to do something. You got to do, it's part of your job.
It's, I mean, because like, if you were just delivering for clients all the time, you'd never. That's it. You would never grow. It would be a straight line.
Yeah.
A lot of gray hairs.
Yeah.
That's the. That's awesome. Yeah. I think we're coming near, or we've probably already gone by. It's been
amazing, a long time because I feel like that was our intro, and now we'll start the actual conversation.
It's like we've gotten aligned on everything.
Yeah.
I noticed. I'm one of this is the last official question on my list, and we can talk about anything else we want to talk about. But I've been enjoying reflecting on the early struggling broke freelancer years, and we've been sharing our kind of our cheap eating or cheap working hacks. And when I lived in Hollywood, I lived across the street from a Subway and a Panda Express, and I could stretch one of those meals, for a day and a half. I'm not proud of it, but it's what's your? I noticed I saw your. You did a story on the chip and salsa, the chip crumb and salsa, and I was like, that's a man who has been a struggling freelancer many years ago, probably. What was your go-to in those early years?
Oh man, it's when I still go to it all when my wife goes out of town, man. My wife, if my wife's out of town, I'm like. All of a sudden, I'm like eating peanut butter and jelly.
You're 20 years old again.
I'm going and buying bologna sandwiches. I got ramen noodles. I get a case of ramen noodles. I got to survive here. It is exactly it. I'm a creature of habit. I just I eat the same things over and over again. Even now, Jimmy Dean egg bowls, man, for lunch. In fact, I'm going to eat one here in about 5 minutes.
That's beautiful.
Microwave it for 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Turn on my iPad and get 15 minutes of just pure enjoyment out of the Jimmy Dean's egg bowl.
That's beautiful. That's a high recommendation for anybody freelancing on a budget. Jimmy Dean egg bowls.
And the amount of protein you get in there if you buy it right, you can get $1.90 per Jimmy Dean egg bowl. You are gold. It can be one meal a day, and you're getting plenty of protein. You're not going to wither and die. It's going to be wonderful.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. All right. Well, that covers it for me. I want to leave you with the final word. If you have anything that you want to make sure that folks that are just starting freelancing have in mind, or
I shared a lot of nuggets, so I'm going to end with my final word, asking you a question. Why don't you tell me, what are your 3 biggest tips for a starting out freelancer? Those 3 big ones, if you had, and then I know you have 100. And your book probably has 1,000. So if you were going to say, these are the 3, what would you say?
I would say, let's take this from as practical attack as possible, because there's an abstract way to answer this question, and there's a more do this, and this way to answer this question. I think if you're just starting out freelancing, first thing you got to do is the thing that you're about to be selling, right? You got to build a portfolio, because a lot of people, they think, well, I don't have any clients yet, so I don't have a portfolio, which is fallacious thinking, right? You have to, so go make that thing. If you're a designer, go, redesign a couple campaigns in your style so that people can see what it is that you're doing differently. Or if you're a photographer, recruit some friends into acting duties or modeling duties, and get them out there and, and do a couple photo shoots. Apply it to any industry. That's one of the fun parts about my page is, I get DMs from creative freelancers, but also, lawyers, accountants, landscapers, you name it. Do whatever your thing is, go find a way to demonstrate your ability in that field. And then I would say, reach out to build a list of allies. You mentioned when we were talking, reaching out to folks on email every now and then, just to see how they're doing. Build that email list. It's going to be friends, family, colleagues, to send that portfolio to, and that's going to likely garner you your first job. And then I guess the third one would be to find a particular target within an industry that is underserved in your offering. I think, and they've heard me say this a bunch of times at this point, is it's not going to be a sexy industry, because if it was a sexy industry, they wouldn't be underserved in your offering. Find somebody that really, an industry that really needs what you do. For me, it was, I made the really sexy sizzle reels for large meetings, conferences, large meetings and events.
Yeah.
And what that's going to do, and we talked about it, is it hacks your word of mouth growth, because, for instance, in my industry, people, within 6 months, people would say, who did that for you? And they, this guy, Jamie Brindle, brought, at that time, I was a crew of one. I had a Steadicam, a boom pole, an LED, but eventually I scaled up my crew. But so that's going to hack the word of mouth growth. And also, to your point about your niche, is it's going to build you a laser focused portfolio. So when you go to these people and they have a very specific problem that needs solved, it's going to give you a leg up on a big agency who's more general.
Yeah.
So, maybe a big sexy agency is bidding on the job, but you've got this portfolio that demonstrates that you're doing nothing but solving the problem that they need solved.
Yeah.
So that's those, niching down is going to basically, exponentially speed up your initial growth, I think. So those would be the three, I think, for somebody who's starting freelancing today: build a portfolio, build a list of allies, and then hone in on a niche industry.
Yeah. Love it. Good advice. Awesome.
It's the best I could do it on such short notice.
On no notice.
Well, I appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, so fun to chat, man. Thank you for the invite and for jumping on. It's just been awesome. Love watching your content. Super fun.
I appreciate it. I'll plug one more time that if you guys want the ebook, Freelancer Year One, link in bio, go get it. I'm terrible at self-promotion. So that's all I'm doing. All right.
It's good self-promotion. I think you're doing good with self-promotion, man. You got this whole launch week of people you're talking with and
stuff.
Just a
party.
It's good. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you. Super fun.